All right, everybody. Welcome to Against the Grain. It's been quite a while since I've had any of these interviews on with everything I've got going on, but I have my first return guest, my friend Nicole Weller. And we're coming to you today for a special discussion. We've got a workshop that is coming up in March. And we wanted to fill you guys in on some of the details that we're going to be talking about in this workshop. Now, Nicole is awesome, first off, for helping me put this together. I have talked to her about my desire to get into education over the last couple of years. And one of the challenges that I had with the training products before was that it just was so demanding. I didn't really have much time to get out and promote the education. And so people saw the teaching aids as just the teaching aids. And I really wanted to get out this time around and let people know it's not just a product, that it's an actual system of training. It's a pathway to developing your players and their own individual games. So now to kick it off, we talked about exploration, the art of exploration, and how vital associative play is, and being able to explore one skill when it comes to the development and the transfer process. So I guess to kick this off, the thing that makes me a little bit different is that I kind of have a problem, not a huge problem, but I'm fairly critical of the modern state of instruction and the fact that it is all bio focused. It is all very technical based, and a lot of the times players, golfers, they don't maybe they overlook the dynamics of the game or the dynamics of a particular skill that they're working on simply for an aesthetic appeal, or what a coach might want to see on video, or whatever the next fad is. I know you've been around this game long enough to know that we coaches, we have great ideas, and a lot of the times guys can get a little smart and try and reinvent the wheel, and the golfer kind of gets caught up in the fad but also left in the dust. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this presentation is my checklist student. I know you've seen that slide, that it's like 12-point list that he showed up to with on the lesson tee.
That's all you get is 12? I've had a couple with a little bit more.
I have had some lists show up to the tee before, but I've never seen anything like that one. That one, I had to stop and take pause. So let me stop there before I get on too far, and just kind of give me your thoughts on that. Where do you think we are in terms of a state of maybe what we teach, or what it appears we teach on a daily basis? I mean, it's not all technical, it's not all biomechanics, and I think a lot of golfers seem to think that that's the way that they have to approach skill development.
Yeah, and as I get deeper into my career, I've grown up playing competitive golf, almost since, single digits in my age. So, I started playing youth golf and then amateur and then Wake Forest and from there just going into the sports psychology realm. So it is so nice to start seeing block and transfer practice verbiage come out more. My master's degrees in sports psychology back in 1995 and 96. I was studying these with motor skills. How do you develop a motor skill? How long does
Right.
it take? And what are the three stages, like understanding what you're doing, acquiring the skill, which takes the longest chunk of time, right? Which could be a month to 2 months starting out, building, and then maintaining, which is for a lot of tour players almost a year before they get one skill performing high octane at that level. So it takes time, and I think the average golfer doesn't hasn't gone through that. They've been working in the real world, so to speak, and they play golf a little here and there on the weekends or events, and then when they finally have time to get into it, they don't really know the process of it. So it's nice to see a transfer practice coming out, at least in the seminars. And even today, I had a student, and they worked on their chipping swing, and I said, nice. So you now know how to do the chipping swing, but I don't want you to practice chipping swing. I want you to practice using your chipping
Right.
swing. We did Another student was doing putting, so we worked on our putting stroke over a mirror over and over again. And then I said, I don't want you now just to work on your putting stroke. I need you to work on how to use your putting stroke.
Right.
So, like in our workshop that we're going to do, I want to share ideas on how I put the transfer to practice, a lot with your training tools, but can we do it around the world? So I want you to set up a tee north, south, east, and west, one putter length away from the hole. You got to make three in a row from each station. And they're like, okay, I've got it. And I said, well, that's just the block practice. Now, here's go time. I need you to now make one in a row consecutively around each tee. And you can't stop until you finally get four in a row. All right. So the transfer practice and how to use it, I think, is it's really important. I love talking about that in my lessons.
Yeah, and I think one of the things now that you brought up the block versus the random thing is I think that, and I will talk about that in this presentation at the workshop, is that it's really, in my opinion, it's a false dichotomy. It's rather than it being block versus random, it's a sliding scale. It's a spectrum. Okay. And you can either be towards that full block practice side or you can randomize that block practice and kind of
Mhm.
slide into that randomization. And I think that there's a place on that scale for everybody, no matter what they're working on. But it's typical that we need to be more towards the block for the beginners and
Right.
the introductory skill. And then as they get better and we work towards more elite stuff, we're working on that random, full randomization. We're simulating the on course play, that type of thing.
Mhm.
So, um, I kind of stumbled into this. I got into the rehabilitative side of the golf, working with wounded veterans in DC and was wholly unequipped to deal with the type of physical trauma that those players had. And when I started seeing how quickly they were developing in a game where they shouldn't be able, you know, from again that biomechanical mindset, they shouldn't be able to move and produce some of the shots that they were producing, and yet they were. And so
Mhm.
I looked into the research of that, and you find that when someone's had a traumatic injury and they're going through these real rehabilitative trainings, that they almost have like superhuman powers. They're like X-Men in terms of the neurology that's developing. I mean, the brain is not only changing in how it functions, but it's also changing in form. If let's say you lose an arm, well, the portion of that brain that used to be dedicated to that arm is now focused on something wholly different, right? And it's really because of, and I'll go ahead and share my first slide. Maybe I'll plug it in. The challenge slide, the one that I'm talking about, where we've got
Mhm.
the uh, the two different brain images, right? We've got
Right.
the low cognition practice, right? Nothing's going on, but then when we get that player into the real world environment, all of a sudden they're having to face those things that they should have been facing in practice, and now all the nodes in the brain are lit up.
Mhm.
And that's really what it is that I think I do the best is just figuring out creative ways to inject adversity into a player's practice. Okay, if they've got a weakness, we talked about my golden ratio in the exploration video. Um, if they've got a weakness, how can I exploit it? How can I put them into situations where the subtleties of the challenge itself will expose that weakness and force them to adjust in some way?
Mhm.
So it's a little bit different because, again, I'm looking to develop. I am still looking to develop the technique and the biomechanics. I'm just not doing it with a focus on the technique and the biomechanics all the time.
Mhm.
I like to let things naturally occur and watch
Mhm.
that light bulb go off and watch them make the change, in a way that's functional for the shot. So,
Yeah, and I think, for both of us, we seem to have a Socratic style. I think we like to put the building blocks out there and then watch them. We know how it's going to go together, but they've got to figure out how to piece it. So we had Dr. Robert Bjork in at the Landings Club where I was, and I love having guest speakers in, like yourself, right? And so I'll never forget, he said, people who have to figure out the answer learn it better and it retains more than being told what to do. So, even as I watch kids getting trained or parents, putting their hands on the club or somebody like a spouse, saying you have to do it this way, offer some options and watch them their eyes light up when they find that one, they're going to find it. But having them go through the pain of finding it in a way is part of learning. It makes more of an impact. So, what is your latest one out? Foursquare?
four squared, yes. Do you like that
Square. I
one?
like that one. Yes. And so I think what you're discussing, like, even with a new golfer, even though we need block practice to get it going, too much block practice, you lose their attention. They get bored. So in today's day and age, what's our average second, what do they say? Goldfish has a 8 second and we
The
have seven.
goldfish
Yeah,
supposedly statistically has a longer attention span than the average
right.
person today.
Yes. So with our attention spans these days, you want to get them rocking and rolling a little too. So, with a new golfer, it might be like, how many can you get on the green? How many can you get on the complete four square?
Right.
And then as you get better, and I love the tool that you have, different colors and small, so you can adjust things. And
Right.
that's the role of a coach, is to figure out, where do I need to go down here? Where do I need to go up? Right. And then show the student how to up and down it as well. So we retain them, but they see success and then they can advance as quickly as they'd like to.
Yeah, well, that's another big point too, is the gamification. We'll be talking about the actual. There is neurophysiological things that happen when you gamify stuff.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's all sorts of ways to kick the learning process into hyperdrive. And
Mhm.
to your point, one of the things that I like to do the best is ask the questions. I
Right.
like to stimulate that cognitive process. I want them thinking, okay, logic, reason, how can I make these things work, right? So, like for instance, the chunking. I'm sure you've heard that terminology, kind of like the interleaving, where you have again the certain variables that associate with one another. Okay, so let's say I know face, I know path, and I know how to accelerate. How do all three of those things go together to help me make this 12 footer I'm looking at?
Mhm.
Or look at this slope and how it kind of tails off. How does that affect the effort that I need to put forward into this task?
Mhm.
It's always it's like a mathematical solution. I want them to understand the solution, or the variables that go into the problem, and help them develop the solution themselves.
Right.
So,
I
um,
can't wait to see you using all of your cool items in person. So, and you came to the landings a while ago when Jim Sykes and I were there, and brought the speed straps, and that was fun to have you there so we could see the master at work with it. So I can't wait to get you there with the new product, and showing all the different ways to use it, and remind me of things that I may not be doing, may not getting everything out of it as well. So,
Yeah, well, the big thing is to remember that it's just like you're the tool lady. I've seen your pictures with all your teaching aids and stuff out there. It's kind of like Lincoln Logs or Legos. You know what I mean? It's just a piece that you're only limited to what you can do with it by your own creativity. I can come up with all kinds of different games or configurations to suit whatever types of challenges I want. I kind of think of it as a kind of like a piece of graph paper. That's kind of how I would tell people the speed straps are, because if I use them vertically, it's a 5 different linear targets vertically for distance control, and if I flip them perpendicular, now we've got 5 different linear directional control targets.
mhm.
And that's another thing that's a little bit different. That I do is I'm very focused on the target refinement. So I have had the opportunity to coach other target sports, and you know, one of the biggest things that I think golfers miss out on is giving themselves a constraint to test their practice with, and then not allowing themselves the opportunity to take in the feedback. We hit a bad shot and we're immediately raking the ball before the ball ever lands. Well, that ball flight was proof of everything that we just looked at, or everything that we just did. And if I am leaving that feedback out, I'm leaving out one of the critical components to skill development, right? I have to have not only knowledge of process, but I have to have knowledge of result, and it has to be timely, and it has to be measurable, and it has to be accurate. Otherwise, my adjustments are just throwing darts at the wind. You know what I mean? Oh,
Sorry, I muted there. So you have to have some intention on that for sure.
what's that?
Intention. So when you're
Yeah.
practicing and showing the drills, definitely some intention and a path to go on that.
Sure, but also just the ability to analyze.
Right.
You got to know what you're looking at and understand what variables again went into that, so that you can adjust properly, and again, adapt to the challenge or the task at hand.
Hmm.
So, I guess a couple of the ideas that we want to explore in this workshop. I want to, because I can't do my screen share and pull up the slides. I will pull some into here. The road to consistency slide. The one that I'm talking about, the head down, elbow in, pelvic rotation, all that kind of thing. Would you say that that's a pretty accurate depiction of the average golfer?
I like that. Yeah. It tends to be a cognitive game, and there's a time for thinking on a thing, but then from there you got to transfer it out. And I always tell students, you've got 10 balls on one idea. And you might be like on shot three, like, oh, I forgot to do this. And I'm like, well, you can, but right now your homework is to finish 10 balls with these shots first. So,
Right, right. And unfortunately, they just want to continue to pound the balls anyways, right? So I might give them two. If I've got, I like moving around a whole lot. I rarely am on the range if I'm doing a motor. If we're really focused on changing a motor pattern, we're on the range. But a lot of the time, I'm on the course and I'm moving them around where they're,
mhm,
again, they're constantly tested. They're constantly facing some different type of, whether it's turf condition, direction of shot, trajectory control, something. I want at
right,
least one, two, three variables constantly at play that they're having to adjust to. And
yeah,
again, it's framed in a way that it exploits whatever weakness they've got. So.
right. Yeah.
Um, what would you like to touch on? I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time tonight kind of diving into just the program. I don't want to bore everybody, but I do want to give them an idea of some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. Now, I guess first thing to tell them is that we're going to be giving you, you're going to get a coaching kit at the workshop. So you'll have all the tools that we'll be using in the workshop for games, drills, skills test, all that fun stuff. We'll have prizes, and we're going to be doing some questions and some trivia. We are going to be doing team competition. So they're going to be pinned against one another. It's not going to be a PowerPoint and standing around twiddling thumbs
No,
and
no.
yawning, right? We're going to throw them into the gauntlet.
Hmm.
Um, what would you like to touch on to let people know kind of where we're headed with this thing?
So I think that, the basic idea, the information is listed on my website under NicoleWeller.com, and it is under upcoming events under the instruction page. And so you'll see the details there. It's going to be Sunday, March 3rd. It's going to be from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we'll have a little introduction, a little presentation there with you, George, just to give the background. But then we're heading outside, and we're going to head outside and do our short game drills, our putting drills. We're going to break into teams. So I've always thought that the interactive format's nice. It keeps people moving, and have just loved being in formats where we're out there utilizing the program. Come back for lunch. The food at Compass Point Golf Club is amazing. So it's the best. And so you'll have a great lunch, and then we'll do some more presentation. And I want to then go into a little bit about how to use it with the average golf club. So if a golf professional is wanting to get a couple of ideas for programs like the putting league that I did last year, and that when it went so well, we did another one. They requested more, short game schools, putting schools, just ideas that I've done in the past that may help. Add a little bit of spice to the programs at your places, and then we'll wrap up there at the end. So it's going to be really fun. We do have our room blocks just wrapped, but there are a couple of hotels near us in Leland that are great. So we're just outside of Wilmington. So hopefully be a nice little destination. I know a lot of people probably went to the show, but this might be one last hurrah to get a couple of great ideas going before the season starts. And we're doing 6 PDRs for PGA members and 4 CUs for the LPGA.
Okay, awesome. Now, let me ask you, what is your favorite configuration? Well, since we're going to go into the lows, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. What's your favorite one?
I like the speed strap. I like using two of the straps together and doing the putting up and down. And if they putt from one side, then after that they have to go to the other side and putt back down. And I'll put it on
Okay.
an uphill, a downhill, and then I'll also use the two for chipping. And I'll put them like one on top of the other with about, I don't know, 10, 15 feet between. So they have to call the color they're going to go over on the first one, but then they can't pass the second one. I like those a lot.
Okay.
And I like when I make a little X with the two straps, and then we either have to chip and it ends up in the quadrant we pick,
Okay.
or we have to pitch it and land it in the quadrant we picked. So
Okay.
those are some of my favorites.
Okay, cool. So the grid setup, the ladder is the putting one, right? Where we're
Hmm.
using it for distance control. The grid would be the one where we're using it for both distance and directional control. And then the crosshair configuration, I love that one. That one's actually
Hmm.
been a lot of fun. If you have a green that's sloped back to front, you can actually play that thing full swing, 100,
Hmm.
150 yards. It's visible. So
Hmm.
I've gotten calls from students, but that have taken those systems out to their home clubs, and it becomes a drinking game or whatever. So and
Hmm.
that's exactly what I want. You know what I mean? I want them engaged in practice. I want the feedback is obviously vital. Being
Hmm.
able to see exactly what your ball is doing and where you're landing it versus how much it's rolling out after that.
Right.
That's all things that you have to be able to analyze in terms of feedback and when you're working on your skills. So,
Hmm.
um, let's see. I wanted to see if what else did I want to touch on? It was really important. I guess we did already touch on the block versus random.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to this thing. I just I really appreciate you being an awesome host and helping me put this together. I'm looking forward to rolling it out. It was again something that I wanted to give attention to years ago and just never had the bandwidth to be able to get out and do it. So you are a rock star for helping me put this first one out, and
Thank
I'm
you.
looking to forward to seeing. I know you've seen the presentation, at least from email. I'm looking forward to doing the whole question and answer and the whole crowd interaction kind of thing. I think it's going to be pretty enlightening, and I think some of the questions that I've got in there are ones that people aren't going to quite expect. They maybe on face value they seem a little bit obvious, but when you think on them on a deeper level, it can get philosophical really quick. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I think the interactions, there's no saying where it could go. So we'll have to probably rein ourselves in and keep ourselves on track because it's going to be chock full of really good ideas. So I
yeah.
think that'll be awesome. We'll do this with a minimum of 6, and are we going to max out at 25? So
Well,
we'll
let
have
me
good.
ask you a question. We haven't discussed this yet together. Are we participating?
Good question. I think it depends on the numbers, but I'm always game. My clubs are they're all ready to go.
I think I might have to. I think I might, you know what I mean? I can't just sit there and just, you know, talk.
Well, we may have to do teams, so that'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, do you have anything in that's in the presentation or that's in the workshop other than the programming, best practices, all that good stuff that you'd like to touch on? You think that's going to be a good key to
I
maybe
think I
entice
think
the
we're really
last?
good.
What's that?
I think we're really good. I think that's awesome. Maybe we can add my website to the end and people can go directly to that link.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
it'll be good.
I will definitely post them up. All right, well, awesome, Nicole. I appreciate your time. I know it wasn't a huge, long conversation, but I just kind of wanted to touch on the workshop and give people a little bit deeper idea. I know we can only fit so much texts on our Instagram posts and on our Facebook blasts and all that stuff. So, those that maybe had some interest and weren't quite sure what we were doing yet, they have a better idea now, and will be willing to jump out there and put themselves to the test with us.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. So March 3rd, and then our sign up deadline is by February 16th. So we can do some planning on numbers and all the things that we need to do to make it a great event. So sign up by February 16th, and we're looking forward to getting this going.
All right, awesome. Yeah, me too. I'm looking very forward to it. We'll make it awesome. We're
Mhm.
gonna get everybody out there and have a blast. So,
We will have a good time.
all right, awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. I
Thanks,
am gonna
George.
kill our feed, and thank you guys for listening.